This is like literally the shortest notice I ever got for preaching. So I told Pastor Casey I'm just going to use the same PowerPoint I'm going to use today at 1.5 Gen later. There's no time for me to make a different PowerPoint. So you're going to see a lot of Chinese there. Just apologize for that. All right, so today we're going to continue in, I think Pastor Casey was going to preach on Isaiah chapter 9 anyway, right? So today I want to talk about the prophecy that came true, which is Isaiah chapter 9's prophecy. Now to start, let me start with by one of the most famous modern day prophet, and her name is Baba Vanga. How many of you heard of her? Okay, all right, so it's like one person or two people heard of her. Okay, so she is a Bulgarian. She already died in 1996, but she's one of the most famous modern day prophets. One of the story is that in August 1976, a very famous Yugoslav actress and singer, and her name is, it's hard for me to pronounce, Silvana Arminiulic, and she went to see her. Vanga did not speak to her at all. And Arminiulic, the singer, was like, okay, this is rude. So she was about to leave. And just when she's about to leave, grandmother Vanga finally spoke, says, you don't have to pay me. I don't want to speak to you, not now. Go and come back in 3 months. Wait, that is if you can come back in 3 months, do so. And Arminiulic, she died 2 months later on October 10, 1976, of car accident. In 1989, the story is that Arminiulic, she heard someone told her not Arminiulic, Vanga, she heard someone told her in her dream, so she made a prophecy, and the prophecy goes like this. Horror, horror, the American brothers will fall after they're being attacked by steel birds. And we all know that this actually came true 2001, and people said that the American brother she was referring to are the Twin Towers. So people say Grandma Vanga, she has about 85% accurate on her predictions. Now, it's hard to count because some of her prophecy that did not come true, for example, she also predicted that World War III will start in 2010 and will end in 2014. But the part that did not come true, people around her always say that, oh, she never said that. So it's hard to say what's the accuracy percentage. But people usually say she has an 85% accuracy percentage. Now, with 85% accurate, she was actually treated almost like a god in her country, if you know her story. There's a church that was built in her name by the money she received from the visitors that visit her. So this is the church that was built in her name. Now, it's not worshiping her, but it's built in her name. Now, she's also visited and paid by all the important people in the Eastern Europe, including the Bulgarian leader, the Yugoslavian leader, and also the Russian leader, Yeltsin, at that time. Yeltsin sent personal rep to see her at least 2 times. Now, whether you believe her or not, her political leaders believe her, for sure. And people around her all believe her, like she is a god. Today, we're going to talk about a prophet and prophecy that is 100% accurate, we know, and it's believable. However, his political leaders around him and people around him still did not believe him, and that is Isaiah, our main character today. Now, he's one of the greatest prophets who prophesied about Jesus Christ 700 years before the birth of Jesus. So today we're going to go to chapter 9, Isaiah chapter 9, and we're going to only read verse 1 to 7. So Isaiah chapter 9, starting with verse 1, nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations. By the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan River, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And verse 3, you have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing their plunder. So Isaiah continues to say there's a great joy. Then he went down to say there are three reasons. There are three fors. So verse 4, it says, For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Verse 5, For every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. And continuing verse 6, For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. So here it says, a boy will be born and will be named this very, very known name. Now, we all know this is probably not his real name, but this is more of his title. Because we know this kid that Isaiah is talking about is Jesus Christ. Because no one else can take that title, right? Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. We know that no one else can take that title. So he has to be talking about Jesus Christ. So let's dive into Isaiah's prophecy. What was Isaiah talking about? So the first contrast Isaiah talked about is darkness versus light. Let's discuss this, okay? Now, when you were little, were you afraid of the dark? Or what creature were you afraid of in the dark? So let me answer this for you to think about, okay? And I'll have you share with people next to you. Instead of afraid of ghosts, I wasn't afraid of ghosts when I was little. I was afraid of the dark. I was actually afraid of burglars more than anything, okay? I grew up in Taiwan. In Taiwan, they have these, I don't know how to call them, like balcony railing or window, extended metal railing. And I was just afraid of that the burglars, they will cut these railing and enter my house. Because when I was young, actually our house got broken, and that's what the burglars did. And I witnessed it. We weren't home, but we came back and realized they cut the railing and entered our house. So every time I woke up at night, I saw these, metal railing. I was afraid that the burglars will cut it and enter from our back balcony. The other thing that I was afraid of was actually E.T. I know it's just a PG movie, but when this movie came out, my parents took me to see. It was my first time to actual theater, okay? And I was 6 years old. I remember I was first grade, and this is when the time E.T. came out, okay? And I was actually traumatized afterwards because I don't know if you've seen the movie. There's a scene that E.T. was actually, it was next to the fridge eating, right? So every time when I go to the kitchen at night, I was just afraid of seeing E.T. at my fridge and eating. So I was so afraid to the dark because I was afraid of seeing E.T. Okay. All right, so I'll give you a minute. Share with people next to you when you were little, what were you afraid of in the dark? Okay. All right, I'll give you a minute to share people next to you. All right. Now, can I give some answers? What were you guys afraid of when you were little? Cockroach, okay. Obviously, you're from Taiwan, okay. Rat, okay. And what? The mirror, okay. Yeah, okay. Wow, those are great answers. What else? Anyone else? Zombies, okay. Wow, you're watching too much Walking Dead. Okay. All right. So the first theme Isaiah talk about is darkness versus light. And in the passage that we just saw, actually 3 times it talk about gloom, it talk about darkness, it talk about deep darkness. The Bible actually uses 3 different words to describe darkness. Then in the same passage, the Bible used 3 different words to talk about light. It talked about glory, it talked about light, it talked about great light. So God promised at that time that these land which saw darkness, God promised them that they will see light. So it's talking about God's protection at that time, but it's also making a prophecy about Jesus Christ. Now let me explain that. So the land that the Bible talk about, who will see darkness, then will see light, is the land of 2 tribes, right? Zebulun and Naphtali. Then also talk about from the sea to the east of Jordan River. It says these lands have darkness and they will be looked down upon. So let's look at what land is he talking about. If you look at these 2 tribes, so this is Zebulun and this is Naphtali. So they are in the north. And from the ocean to the east of Jordan River, so they're talking about this place. And if we put side by side with Isaiah's time, it's about this place. Now, the map is not in exact same proportion, but you can make reference. This is the Dead Sea, this is Dead Sea, this is the Sea of Galilee, and this is the Sea of Galilee. So it's about this place. Now, what's so special about this place? This is the northern border of Israel. So when Aram and when Assyria attack, when the enemy attack, this is always the region that the enemy attacked first, and also Babylon later. So this place easily fell into the hands of Gentile. That's why it's called the land of Gentile, Galilee. And every time the battle happens at this place. So this place is torn. This is like a cursed area because the enemy always come attack from the north first. So the Bible said this is a place that's being looked down upon, and this is a place that's full of darkness. But God said God will turn it around. God said, I will make this place see the light. And this is exactly what happened when Jesus came. In Matthew chapter 4, it talks about Jesus, he withdrew to Galilee, leaving Nazareth. He went and lived in Capernaum, which is by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. From that time, Jesus began to preach, repent, from the kingdom of heaven has come near. So if you put side by side this map to Jesus' ministry, so Jesus' ministry actually started in the Galilee area. In fact, most of his Jesus' ministry happened in the Galilee area. And this is what God is talking about. This is what Isaiah, the Bible, is talking about. It says the light will start in Galilee. And in fact, Jesus' hometown, Nazareth, is in the land of Naphtali. And it belongs to the tribal region of Naphtali. So the hometown Nazareth, which is the city that people look down upon, no one says, people say, what good can Nazareth can come out of Nazareth, right? But God said this is the place that will not only see light, but a great light. And Jesus referred to himself as light in John chapter 8. And he said, when Jesus spoke again to people, he said, I'm the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. In John chapter 12, Jesus said, I have come into the world as light, so that no one who believes in me shall stay in darkness. We all know what darkness means in our life. Darkness means uncertainty, suffering, fear, death. Now, in this life, our life will have some darkness, right? You'll have some darkness that represents, I don't know, suffering, pain, difficult things in life, hopelessness, depressed. But Jesus said, I am the light that will shine in the darkness of your life. And there are times that when I pray for people, and God gave me like almost like a picture, like an image, that a person is running, but behind him or her, there's a vast darkness that's chasing him or her. But God represents the light that's pulling this person. A lot of times when I pray for people, God show me this image as darkness is always chasing us. The darkness of our life is always chasing us. But God said, Jesus, I'm the light that will shine into your darkness. The darkness can also mean afterlife, our ultimate ending, which is our death, right? In Japan or many Asian cultures, they will send out the spirits of the dead on lanterns floating on water or river, praying that they can be sent to peace, because they want the light to guide the spirit into peace. In Tibet, when people die, they believe their soul now travels to the underworld, which is a dark and dangerous place. So that's why Tibetan culture, after people die, they will light out these yak butter lamp, which serve as light to guide the soul through the underworld, so that their soul will not be caught by demons and evil spirits, so that they can pass through the underworld safely and be reborn into the world. However, there's no assurance. They don't have full assurance that this soul can overcome the dark underworld and be reborn again. Not until maybe they can ask the Lama a year or two from now on and ask the Lama to see if the person has reincarnated. But Jesus says, I know what happens after death because I conquered death myself. No one else can conquer death, but Jesus said, I conquered death. I have the authority to conquer death. I have the authority to conquer this ultimate darkness in people's life. So when we talk about Jesus, when we talk about light, we know that Isaiah already prophesied about that through his prophecy about dark versus light. The second prophecy Isaiah talked about is bondage versus freedom. Now maybe I talk about this joke here. So there's a wife, she's always very, very, very anxious. Little noise wakes her up, and she's like, hey, maybe there's a burglar like me, okay? But no, I wasn't like that. I'm just afraid of burglar when I wake up. But there's wife, she wakes up all the time, and he hears noise and say, hey, wake up her husband and say, hey, go check it out. I heard something. So this husband never get a good night's sleep, with little noise downstairs. Wife will wake him up and go downstairs and check. There's nothing. Now there's one night, wife wakes up again and say, hey, I heard something. Go down and check. So the husband go downstairs and check. Wow, this time there's actually a burglar who just came in. Now the burglar saw the husband so he's going to run away. And the husband say, no, stop. Don't go yet. My wife has been waiting for you for the past 10 years. Why don't you go upstairs and see her? There are things that may bound us for a long time. There are things that's our bondage for a long time. That's hard for us to overcome. And this is what Isaiah talked about in verse 4 and 5. In verse 4 and 5, he said, we already read this. So he talked about this prophecy is about freedom. He said there is going to be a liberator that will set you free, just like in Midian's time, when Midians were defeated. Now, what's so special in Midian's defeat was that it's defeated by an Israelite leader called Gideon, and it's recorded in the Bible in book of Judges. So when Gideon, when he defeated the Midian, so first of all, the location is important because there are 4 L's. The location is similar. The location is the north. This is what happened. This is Gideon's homeland, and this is where the battle happened. And this is actually happened in the Naphtali and Zebulun region. And the Naphtali and Zebulun are the 2 tribes that joined Gideon in their battle versus the Midian. And as you can see, this is the Sea of Galilee. So this actually happened close to the Galilee region. It actually happened at the Galilee region. And this is Nazareth, where the birth of Jesus Christ. So first of all, God used that because the location is very similar. The second similarity is light into darkness. So the second L is light. Now, in Gideon's story, what was the weapon that Gideon used to kill the enemy? They didn't use knife at all. If you read the story, they actually used torch. That's the only weapon they used. So Gideon and his 300 people, all they did was use torch and yell at night. So what they did was they put the light in darkness, and for some reason, enemies started to panic, and they started to kill each other, and they all died. So the only thing Gideon did was light torch in the darkness. And this is very similar to what we talk about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is a light in darkness, and enemy will flee and enemy will be defeated. So there's a similarity there. The third one, I can make up an L, but unlikely hero. So Gideon used 300 men versus 120,000. And when he faced a huge enemy, God used an unlikely hero. Gideon only used 300 men. Now, to face a huge enemy at Isaiah's time, which they're facing Aram and Assyria, they're the strongest army at that time. And God said, I'm going to use a baby as a sign. And I'm going to use something very weak to go against something very strong. At Jesus' time, that's the same thing. Roman Empire is the strongest empire, the strongest army at that time. And they also face the true enemy, which is Satan, death, and sin. This is what Jesus' enemy was about. But God said, well, instead of using a glorious king, a glorious empire high up there, I'm going to just use this baby. I'm going to use this baby in a manger who rides on a donkey, who died on a cross. I'm just going to use that. This is how I'm going to conquer the Roman Empire. And this is how I'm going to ultimately defeat Satan, sin, and death. And this is what God does, right? Weakness over power, foolishness over wisdom. Not overpowering you with army, but God's answer to the biggest military power at that time is a child, which is an unlikely hero. And finally, Gideon is a liberator. In Judges, it says the Midian was so oppressive to the Israelites, but says, then Jesus is an even better liberator than Gideon. Gideon was temporary, right? Gideon was a liberator, gave them freedom only temporarily. But God said, Isaiah said, Jesus, this little child will liberate you from bondage forever for good. Because all the warrior, they can burn their stuff. There's no need for all these battle wardrobe, because I'm going to set you free for good. Now, our life also has a lot of bondage. Both you and I, we have a lot of bondage. There are heavy burdens on us. Maybe our past history. Maybe how others have wronged you. Maybe it's the guilt that you have do something wrong. Maybe it's the obligation that you need to please others. You need to create an image that satisfies people around you. Maybe it's the spiritual perspective, the burden, the sin and temptation that binds you. Maybe you want to do good, you want to be a good person, but it's just hard to do that. And God says, I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to liberate you, and you're going to be free. And this is what God said. I'm going to make you free. So this is what God said. A baby will be born to you, for you, and He will liberate you. He will make you free. And the end of the prophecy, we talked about prophecy in the beginning. The end of prophecy, He said, He will reign on David's throne and over His kingdom. So now, who is David? He's a king. Where is David's kingdom? Actually, the capital is in Jerusalem. So the prophecy begins with light in the Galilee area and ends with King David, who is in Jerusalem. And this is exactly what Jesus Christ did. Jesus Christ's life started in Nazareth, and he did his ministry in the Galilee area. And he ended his life in Jerusalem. He died in Jerusalem. And by dying on the cross, he actually resumed kingship. He actually becomes king of the world by dying in Jerusalem. So you see, what Isaiah predicted, he prophesied about, actually became true in Jesus Christ. As Jesus Christ started in the Naphtali area and ended and become a king by dying in Jerusalem. So you see the parallel that Isaiah was trying to say here. Now, Isaiah's prophecy about Jesus Christ, he talked about he's going to be, this starts with chapter 7, that is going to be born of a virgin. He's going to be a King David's descendant. He's going to be from the area of Galilee, because the life starts there. He's going to end in Jerusalem and become a king there. And he's also called the mighty God himself, and he brings peace, and he represents God is with us, Emmanuel. And we talk about that when we talk about chapter 7. And all this have to fit into one person, which is Jesus Christ. This is what Isaiah talked about. So Isaiah's prophecy, it's so crazy that there's total of 20 prophecies, at least 20 prophecies in the book of Isaiah about Jesus Christ, and they all came true. So the non-Christian scholars, they're having a hard time. They read Isaiah and say, no, this is not possible. It's hard to believe. So they come up with a solution, right? This is 700 years before Jesus, right? So the solution they can come up with, the manuscript that we have about Jesus, the Isaiah manuscript, this must be something that was done after Jesus was born. So people changed that. So it's too real that the scholars believe that we actually changed the manuscript after Jesus' time, because the oldest manuscript at that time is 100 years after Jesus. So this is what they believe. They can't believe what Isaiah was talking about, so they say, must be someone changed it. So by 100 years after Jesus' time, this is why the manuscript, the only manuscript we have. Now, in 1948, I think Pastor Casey talked about it in the very, very beginning, a shepherd boy actually fell into a cave near the Dead Sea area and discovered what's called the Dead Sea Scroll in 1948. And the earliest book they found is a complete scroll of book of Isaiah, and it's dated about 356 BC. So this manuscript is dated for sure. This is about 350 years before Jesus. And it has the exact same content of the Isaiah that we read today. And you can still find that content in Israel. So we know that the prophecy that Isaiah talked about was definitely before Jesus, and we know it came true. And we know that has power in us because Jesus is the one who shines light in your life, and he breaks the bondage in your life. Let's pray. Father, I pray for my brother and sister as we come before you. Father, I pray that as Jesus walks into our life, he also shines light into darkness. He also breaks the bondage that binds us. And Father, I also pray that you help us to know that the God that we believe in is a true God, that his prophecy is accurate, and his prophecy is meaningful at that time. It's meaningful to us in our life. Continue to speak to us. Continue to shine light into darkness. And help us to be missionary, to shine light into other people's life. Just like the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, they were covered with darkness, but they're the origin of mission. They're the location where mission starts. And help us to be that. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.